The brief that was set was a general brief across the whole year group, about 200 students, about 20 studios. So each studio has responded to that brief in a different way. And our ambition here was to try and get a whole raft of different ideas that would rub up against each other and help us sort of imagine the future for bays.
My project was a series of machines that was preserving the site, allowing parts of it to be activated by the public and engaging with the process of conservation and preservation.
It's a fascinating project. It's messy, it's problematic. It's got an enormous amount of embodied history, both material and social history. It's got a huge amount of community significance to it. One of the uses that we found to best explore these ideas was ideas of how you might create a cultural space within that.
Our project name is the City on Bridge, so it's easy to see that we built a bridge, but it's not a normally bridge. It's kind of multifunctional, like a mini city happen on the bridge.
My project this semester was to design a master plan for the Bays Precinct, really trying to connect the existing suburbs so that it wasn't just like a new suburb, it was a part of the existing city.
I think that there are a lot of different variations of opportunities that could go into this space, whether they be cultural, whether they be based on the heritage of the building, bringing it back to life in some way, not only within the space, but also surrounding it for the local community.
The brief was to actually come up with a vision for the Bays Precinct that would adopt many of UrbanGrowth's core visions, which was incorporate jobs and housing, open space provision, access to the waterfront. But one of the core drivers that we thought about was how the projects could address climate resilience.
Our project is Connections, Cuts and Grids, and it's really about creating connections. At the power station in particular, we were turning into an education and research facility with a solar plant, so enough energy to power the entire precinct.
Well, our vision for White Bay Power Station was to become the sort of centre of a large climate resilient wet network, and the idea was that all of our roads became porous channels that could harvest stormwater and interweave a sort of research and educational centre into that.
The name of our project was Aqueous Living. We were looking at sort of catchments where water is collected, where salt water meets fresh water, and reintroducing this water into the site. And when the tide was high, it created this reflective pool which sort of made beautiful reflections of the power station and drew attention to that.
Our project was named Prosperity. Throughout this whole area, we have created a strong focus on health, social health, human health and ecological health.
Our proposal was a master plan for the whole site, and it was called Switching Gears. Often industries being pushed out of Sydney City, so spaces for creative industries, IT. We've tried to design the White Bay Power Station and areas surrounding to include all of those.
One of the core things we wanted the landscape architecture students to really embrace was the majesty of the building and how to respect and honour that, as well as make it a working building.
We got to go in there, and inside the building it's amazing. The views out, the views in. It's such a beautiful place and so much potential.
The site was very challenging. It was at a scale that we haven't really dealt with before, and we jumped into that.
There were lots of challenges throughout the experience, mainly because it's sort of quite an awkward space, so creating sort of flowing shapes that actually worked well with the water. It was overall a fantastic experience, and sort of, yeah, we were able to work well as a group together.
The White Bay Power Station was an amazing project to work on. It is an icon for our city, and I think there are a lot of eyes watching to see what's going to actually happen.
I think developers need to be sensitive to those ideas of attachment, but there is an enormous amount of play possible within those. And I think anyone who takes on that kind of project should keep that in mind, that they have that one-off chance to make something really quite remarkable and interesting that plays to the uniqueness of the site and the structure, and at the same time speaks to those ideas of memory. A bold intervention in a historic building that both has an eye to the past but really moves towards the future.
Consider all options because it is a very important site. I think it needs to be approached in a very bold way architecturally. In terms of what Sydney needs as a city, it needs to be something very innovative, technology-based.
There's a very optimistic idea about what can happen at Bays, and I think a very global and world positioning type of attitude that the students have recognised. I hope that when the developers, the financiers and the strategists are looking at these types of documents, they're getting a little bit of that positivity and seeing a bit of that sort of potential that's sort of coming out of, again, different quarters of thinking. Usually happens with the idea of the optimism of youth going at something like this.
with this particular building itself marks the opportunity to do something quite dramatic and something quite outrageous that speaks the language for the rest of the development. That this is an amazing opportunity for something incredible to happen, an incredible headache at the same time, but a very rewarding one for the opportunity that exists currently.